Hello guys and welcome back to Planet 40k, the Necrons channel. Now in today's video I thought I'd go through some of the, all of the stratagems that are available from the core rules for 10th edition. Go through them, kind of relate them to Necrons, work out what's going to be good, what's going to be not so good. Also we're going to talk about the Necron specific one that they showcased in the Warhammer community article. It's probably about 3 weeks ago now, maybe even more. So we're going to go through that one as well. And as always, if you could kindly subscribe to the channel, that would be fantastic. So just going back through the league, I thought there were 12, but I can only actually see 11 of these stratagems. Maybe I've missed one. Who knows? But for the 12th one today, as mentioned, I'm going to go through the Necron one as well. Now let's get on to the first one. Let's get into it. So the first one is command reroll. It's pretty much as it was. Not much has changed. It's one command point. They've added the desperate escape tests. So if you're not able to escape when you're trying to fall back, and any rolls of a 1 I believe, you will basically lose models. So you're able to re-roll one of those with command reroll. They've also added the hazardous tests, so that's effectively plasma weapons. We've not got them, but I've seen from recent articles that there are faction abilities that basically enable us to have, or they force us to have hazardous weapons. So we will have to understand how hazardous works. It's pretty much the same as plasma. But we do have the opportunity to re-roll that with the command re-roll. Obviously there's no psychic tests anymore or deny the witch tests. So we're not going to be using them for that. But other than that, command re-roll is pretty much very standard and as it was. The second one, counter-offensive, there's no changes there. In fact, there's 2 command points. And you're basically fighting with a unit that hasn't fought in your opponent's turn. No changes there whatsoever. The third one, Epic Challenge. This is a brand new one. This one is very interesting. So this one, basically how it worked is in the fight phase, we can enable one of our character models to have the precision ability with the melee weapons. So what would this be good for? I mean, for example, the Nightbringer. If his weapons aren't precision weapons already, we don't know because we haven't seen the datasheet, but let's just say for the sake of argument that they're not. Well, 1 command point, you can turn your Nightbringer into a character assassinator, basically. Even though the character's hiding within the unit, the Nightbringer can put all of his attacks specifically on a character within that unit to get rid of him. It's also going to be pretty useful for a command barge because of the speed of the barge. Previously it was 12 inches, could be the same for this edition, we don't know. But throwing the command barge, which has always been known to be quite a resilient unit anyway, but throwing them out the battlefield, getting into a fight with a unit with a character in it, and having the Epic Challenge stratagem and going against characters with the precision ability is another way to eliminate characters. Maybe the Silent King, that could be another way of using this stratagem, although in 9th edition I personally found the Silent King to be quite mediocre in melee. I didn't find him as epic as he could have or should have been really, but again, with the sheer amount of attacks he's got, and well, that he had, we don't know if he's got it in 10th edition, but the sheer amount of attacks he could potentially have with the Epic Challenge ability, that could be a way of using it. Or maybe it's the turn of the Scorpic Lord. In 9th edition, the Scorpic Lord was pretty bad, to be honest with you, quite expensive as well. Still pretty quick, 8-inch movement in 9th edition, could be something to use with this stratagem. So yeah, you have to keep your eye on that one because that could be a very good character assassinator. But we've also got to, in fact, consider our own characters. Technomancers, for example, Chronomancers, maybe they're going to get epically challenged. Epically challenged? That's definitely not what I meant. Maybe they're going to get epic challenged by enemy characters, so we've also got to consider that too. Next we come on to Insane Bravery. It used to be 2 command points, and you used to automatically pass your morale test. That's how it worked in 9th edition. Now it's only 1 command point, and you can actually do it after you've failed the battle shock test. So you can roll for it. Once you actually fail it, you can then use this Insane Bravery stratagem for 1 command point after failing it, and then you automatically pass. So that's pretty useful. I mean, they say that once you've failed battle shock, you can't use stratagems, but in the actual leak of this stratagem, it says that you can effectively use it even though they are battle shocked. Now this is going to be useful because this now happens in the command phase, not the morale phase, which doesn't exist anymore. So if you are, insanely brave and you're still, you're not battle shocked, you're going to be scoring your points on your objectives. You're going to be able to use stratagems. You're not going to be able to, you are going to be able to fall back if you needed to, and any other things that relate to not being battle shocked, I suppose. So it's definitely going to be useful, especially the command phase, because that's the start of your turn. That's when you want to be doing stuff with your units. So I expect to see that one quite often played out. And again, only one command point is fairly cheap. The next one on the list is the Fire Overwatch stratagem. This is quite interesting now. It isn't as it used to be. So it used to be, obviously, when a unit declared a charge, for one command point you can fire Overwatch within 12 inches, and you need to roll a 6 to hit. That's how it used to be. Now it's a little bit different. So you've got the option of using it in the charge phase, or the option of also using it in the movement phase. Or both, I suppose. If you can only use it once per phase, you can use it in both. But you can do it at the start of the movement, at the end of the movement. You literally decide when you do it in the movement phase. So that's quite key there. What this also means, say for example you've got an enemy unit that's deep striking in, you could use it on them because that's the end of that unit's movement. You could do it before their movement, but of course they're off the board at that stage. They can pop in and you can say, hey, you know what? I'm going to use my Overwatch stratagem and fire at that new unit that just came in. Also, it's got a 24-inch range now rather than a 12-inch range. So you could be using it for those mid-range weapons. Even the 24 is pretty good anyway, isn't it, really? It's going to have a really good interaction with Tesla weapons in particular, because I would likely suspect that we're going to have the Sustained Hits 2 ability on our Tesla weapons, like we did in 9th edition. Any 6s to hit scored 2 additional hits, didn't they? So I suspect that would be still a thing. Sustained Hits 2 is pretty much what that is. So any 6s to hit scoring 3 hits. When you've got a large unit of models with Tesla, that's going to be pretty handy in their movement phase too. Also, you've got the large models such as the obelisks with the Tesla spheres. That's a lot of shots with Tesla again. And again, doing it in the movement phase is pretty cool. Now we're going to come back to this stratagem later on because there is a bit of a combination pairing that I want to talk about, but we'll get onto that later in this video. The next one on the list is another new one, which is called Grenade. Now it's not likely going to work with our units because I don't believe we've got Grenade in our keywords anywhere. I remember it being a Space Marine thing. Maybe there's other factions that have got Grenade, I'm not entirely sure. Now what this does is you take a Grenade unit from the army that's not within engagement range, and if they're within 8 inches of the enemy units, you can throw a grenade. You roll 6d6, and for every 4+ it's a mortal wound. So on average that's going to be 3 mortal wounds. Now you've got to watch out particularly for characters that are out in the open. Maybe you're going to take 3 wounds just like that. Maybe it's going to finish off a vehicle. Maybe it gets rid of a Scorpet Destroyer. So this thing, for 1 command point, it's going to be quite useful. But again, it only relates to grenade units. And I'm not entirely sure if the rest of the unit can then proceed to fire. So I'll have to keep track on that one and find out for you. On to another new one, go to Ground. This one used to be, I don't know if it was a stratagem, I think it was just a standard ability, a core ability from one of the editions long ago where infantry units can go to ground and get basically what this is in fact. So infantry only, so make that clear, it's infantry only, so vehicle heavy list, it's not going to be that useful. Now Necrons have got a lot of infantry, so this could be useful for us. But yeah, it's going to work better on some factions more than others. It's going to be more beneficial on larger units because all of the units are going to, well, all of the models in that unit are going to gain the bonuses. In fact, what are the bonuses? Let's talk about that. So you're going to be getting a 6+ invulnerable save on all models in the unit, and the benefits of cover, so +1 to your armor save. Now you're not going to get both of those abilities at the same time because it's kind of like one or the other. You're either going to get the invulnerable save or you're going to get a better armor save. You can't kind of combine them, you're choosing the best one, aren't you? So if you are relying on the invuln save, then the likelihood is you're in trouble. You're already in a bit of trouble there. So really you kind of want this for the light cover. Maybe it gets you to a 3+ armor save. Now of course it's not going to stack with cover because it effectively is cover, isn't it? But maybe if there's an objective in an open space with no terrain, this one could be useful for your infantry. Maybe you've got some immortals or flayed ones and you put them into that open area in no man's land. There's no terrain whatsoever around this area. You pop this stratagem, go to ground, and it's just going to keep them up and running for just that bit longer. Next one, this is the one I'm probably most looking forward to, which is Tank Shock. Now you guys know I love vehicles, I love my Ghost Arcs in particular, but we don't really know the melee strength of Ghost Arcs as of yet. They've not announced the data sheets for the Ghost Arcs or the Doomsday Arcs, so I don't actually know the potential that this could have with a Ghost Arc. However, they did showcase the Monolith, so we do know roughly the potential with the Monolith. So Strength 8 was what the Monolith had in terms of the melee weapon with the Portal of Exile. And this stratagem basically says for every single unit of strength that you have, you get a d6. So if you've got a strength 8, that's going to be 8 dice. Now if our strength is better than the opposing unit's toughness on the charge, then you get 2 more dice. So the monolith's going in for a charge, you pop the stratagem 1 command point, you're going to get your 8 dice as mentioned for the strength 8, 2 more if the enemy unit is toughness 7 or less. That will give you a total of 10 dice to play with. You roll all 10 of those dice, any 5+ rolls are a mortal wound to a maximum of 6. So on average that's going to be about 3.3 mortal wounds. Of course you can't get the 0.3, this is dice, you either got it or you haven't, but you can expect maybe 3. Sometimes you can roll and you can get 6, sometimes you roll and you get nothing, that's just dice, isn't it? But then after you've actually done your tank shot, the monolith then proceeds to fight with its 6 attacks at weapon skill 2+, strength 8, -2 AP, 3 damage. Monoliths are pretty good in combat. Now I believe all the vehicles now are okay in combat, they're actually going to do a bit of damage. I mean, we saw it from the Land Raider data sheet release when they did the Space Marines. I can't remember if they hit on I think they hit on a 3+ now with their tracks, their tank tracks. So they're actually hitting, whereas previously they used to have to hit on a 6+. So even if we're going to, compare that to say a Ghost Ark, let's just imagine for a moment Ghost Arks with strength, I don't know, strength 4, could be 6, I don't really know. You're going to get 4 dice, maybe 5, maybe 6, maybe 2 more if your strength is more than the toughness. And you're going to be getting maybe a couple of mortal wounds just from the Ghost Ark, I suppose. Again, that's not confirmed yet, but I'm just kind of predicting there. But Tank Shock I think is going to be a very useful one, especially on the charge. Only 1 command point too. On to the next one, which is Smokescreen. It's new-ish. I say ish because this just looks to me like the Smokescreen stratagem that the Space Marines had from 9th edition. It's got a slight difference to it, but pretty much is the same as it was. So in terms of the similarities, it's still got that -1 to hit with stealth, although they didn't call it stealth in 9th edition, of course. Now it's also going to give you the benefits of cover as well. So similar to grenades, in fact. I don't believe we've got stealth or smoke units, in fact. They've said it's smoke. You have to have the smoke keyword to have this. I don't believe we've got any smoke units. I could be wrong, but it's pretty doubtful. I think it's going to be like a Space Marine and a Chaos Space Marine thing again. Probably won't relate to us at all. Now you could stack this stratagem with going to ground on an infantry unit. Now, okay, both of them do give the benefits of cover, so that could be wasteful in that aspect. But if one gives a 6+ invulnerable save, and one gives a -1 to hit with the stealth, that could combine quite nicely, although it is 2 command points. But that is a combination that you may see in the game. Okay, to another newish one, well, another new one, Rapid Ingress. This one I think is a little bit filthy, because you can effectively deep strike in on your opponent's turn. In your opponent's movement phase, you're literally popping your unit in, and just as I mentioned before, there's a combination with this. In fact, I mentioned this earlier in the video. The Fire Overwatch stratagem can be used alongside this one. So it's your opponent's turn, it's your opponent's movement phase, you can bang in a unit of, I don't really know to be honest, but let's just say you bang in a unit that's got the deep strike ability. They're also a gun unit, a range unit. You can then pop the Fire Overwatch ability, or the Overwatch stratagem rather, for another command point. So you've just popped in your opponent's turn, and then you're firing, hoping to hit on 6s for 2 command points in total. That could be absolutely crazy for some factions, maybe not so much for Necrons, because I can't think of a unit off the top of my head that's going to deep strike and fire really well. Hexmark Destroyer, that's one model. If there's ways of deep striking, Necron Warriors again, that could be really cool, but they don't have a natural deep strike. So we'll have to see if we do have any natural deep strikes, in fact. But yeah, again, with the sustained hits ability with the Overwatch, that could be pretty good. But if you're using this without the Fire Overwatch, you're just using it purely to pop in on your opponent's turn, that's still going to be very tactical, because you're going to nullify certain threats. There's going to be a lot of situations such as getting onto objectives, or maybe your enemy units are trying to make a charge move, so they're moving around getting ready for that, and you're coming in and blocking that line of sight before they've even moved. Not line of sight, you've just blocked their path, in fact, so they've now got to deal with the unit that you've just popped in. Maybe it's flayed ones. I mean, there's many more different situations, just blocking up avenues or reinforcing a certain area of the battlefield. But that one I think is another one that you're going to see quite often, and it's only 1 command point as well. Okay, on to the last core rules stratagem that we've got in the list. I'm sure I'm missing one here, so guys, if I have missed one, let me know down in the comments below, because I feel like I've missed one here. But the last one I've got is Hero Intervention. Now this is a stratagem now, and it's not just for characters, it's for any unit, and it's also not 3 inches, it's now 6 inches. So you're effectively, in your opponent's charge phase, if you're within 6 inches of a enemy unit, you can effectively do a charge move, even though it's not your turn. It's 2 command points. Now it's not going to work with vehicles unless it's a walker. They've probably turned that off because of the tank shock maybe, because otherwise you'll instantly be throwing out mortal wounds there. But we don't really have any walkers unless the Triox Stalker becomes a walker. That's the only one I can think of that could potentially be a walker, but other than that, it's not going to work on vehicles. In fact, also, we're not going to be getting the charge bonus, even though we've effectively made the charge, because at the last part of the stratagem on the leak, it says restrictions. Note that even if your charge was successful, your unit does not have the charge bonus this turn. So we're not going to be fighting first, effectively. Now I'm trying to think of a situation where you'd want to do this, because if you're not fighting first, are you just throwing away units perhaps? But if you're catching a gun unit out, a ranged unit, maybe some devastators perhaps, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, they're not really going to fight back much. So getting into a fight with them, you're not going to expect too much damage coming your way, even if they fight first. That could be worth it. Or it could be worth it on units to just tie them up. Canoptic Scarabs again, getting onto a unit that's not going to fight back. If it's on an objective, in fact, that could be also very handy, because if you've got a better objective control than they do, then you take the objective. So there's lots of ways of using heroic intervention, also just to gain ground as well, I suppose. Because once you do actually make that charge move, it's got to be 6 inches, of course. You've got the piling move, the consolidation move potentially. So you could potentially make up a lot of ground with heroic intervention. Now, as mentioned, I'm going to talk about the Necron specific one that was showcased, which is the Protocol of Hungry Void, which is not a command protocol anymore, it's actually a stratagem. Command protocols are not a thing anymore. So this one is 1 command point, and you pretty much get a +1 to your strength, and also if the character is in that unit, you get an extra bit of AP on the side of it. So it's very similar to the Disruption Field stratagem we had in 9th edition. That was a +1 to the strength for a core unit. This one is +1 to strength for any unit, and if the character's there, you get an extra -1 AP. Now this one could be good with flayed ones, because flayed ones you've got a lot of models, a lot of attacks, so bumping all those model strengths up as well as the AP, that could be pretty good. I mean, even Necron Warriors, I know they're not a melee unit, but when you've got that many models, that many attacks, strength 4. So that'll bump us to strength 5, it'll bump us to -1 AP with the actual character within the in the unit. 20 attacks. Yeah, I'm not saying that's the most ideal unit, but even that kind of unit could work with. Obviously, you want a melee unit. You want your Scorbit Destroyers. You want your Canoptic Wraiths, flayed ones again. They're the kind of units that you want to be using this on. But the problem with this one is you need to have a character. We don't need to, but it's more ideal with a character within the unit. We still have yet to know what characters can go in what units, and vice versa. So we can't really predict this one until we know more, basically. We don't know if a Technomancer can go with the Canoptic Wraiths. Probably can, but we don't know. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. So guys, yeah, just a little walkthrough with the stratagems for 10th edition with all the information that we've got so far. Again, I think I'm missing one of these here. Might not be, but there must be one. I'm sure they said there was 12 stratagems, and I've only seen 11 here. But the ones I'm looking forward to the most, Epic Challenge, I think is going to be a really good one for that precision ability on our characters. As well as, what was the other one? Tank Shock, of course, Tank Shock. I'm going to be making my Go Start list, and I'm going to be using Tank Shock all day. So guys, drop a like on your exits. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.